I've tried to be very deliberate with my decisions and what I say yes to and what I say no to. And I think a lot of people, they say yes because they want to please people, and to me, I think that's a disaster. If you're not into something, you shouldn't do it. But if you do want to do something, I feel like you should, commit to it and give it what you have at that time. And that can change from day to day, from week to week, from year to year. Life is all about different seasons. Yeah, I'm good.
The temp. Okay. I guess we're good. Quiet on set, right? I'll open it up right now, I guess. Let's get this going. Hey, welcome. This is the Social Academy, where we have real conversations with industry professionals, influencers, and content creators about working in the crazy world of social media. Today we have Emily Jones, a person of a lot of talents, Texas Ranger field sports reporter. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Field reporter, dugout reporter, yeah. Whatever you got.
Podcaster, and I guess you have a wine. What do you
marketer
call it?
Of wine.
Marketer
yes.
of wine, and some other things we'll get into as we get into this conversation. So, I guess let's just start off what's your origin story? I guess let's. We don't have to go too far back, when you were a child, but, when did you start doing the sports reporting and also kind of go into some of the other things you do?
Well, so I grew up in Plainview, Texas. I was raised by my father. My sister and I both were. And so instead of doing the stereotypical girl things, we did the stereotypical girl things while watching the Dallas Cowboys play football and watching other sports, because that's how we spent time together as a family. I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be in television, and so marrying television with sports to me was a dream. And so after a couple of years of being a news reporter, I got an opportunity to go into sports. And so for the last 20 years, I've been in the sports world. Actually, it's been longer than that, 25 years. So yeah, I've just been, I worked for a local television station in Lubbock after college, and then made the transition to DFW and Fox Sports Southwest, which is what it was called at the time. And then for the last 10 years have worked directly for the Rangers organization as their field reporter.
Yeah, so every season you're on call. I take it once it gets going, luckily we got you in before, I guess, this, but once you get going, it's like, hey, I'm out of pocket for months.
Yeah, it's basically, 6 months on, 6 months off. So, that's as of, the last few years, since we haven't gone to the playoffs, I've gotten a longer off season. But basically from the time the season ends until I report for spring training, which is usually around mid-March, I'm off and free to do other things. I do, little things here and there for the Rangers in the off season, but I pretty much have that time to myself with my family, with my other business ventures, just focusing on, those things, community work, volunteering, different things like that.
No, yeah, it's incredible. We'll get into how you're juggling all that, because that is an insane amount of work. And kind of going back to what you were talking about, I'm just curious on I was shocked to hear you coming kind of from small town beginnings. Was there a lot of struggle and challenges to kind of get into those more spotlight scenes, especially in Texas,
Yeah, especially being a woman in sports,
sure.
In the buckle of the Bible Belt
whole
of West Texas.
Whole nother ball
yeah,
game
for
there.
Sure. But yeah, it definitely wasn't, a path that had been laid out for me, as far as being from Plainview and going to school at Texas Tech and all that kind of stuff. But
so how did where did that jump go from doing the newscasting to, hey, I finally got an opening in sports?
Yeah, so I did news for 2 years, and I hated it because it was too serious, and I'm not serious. And so had an opportunity, to make that transition to sports, which I had always made it very clear that that's what I wanted to do eventually. The time I graduated, there were no openings that I could find in the sports world, so I decided to get, comfortable in front of the camera, and I could do that, being a news reporter. Always knowing that the end game was to be in sports. And so after a couple years, an opportunity opened up. I jumped at it and have never looked back.
No, that's I feel like as someone from a video background, that was a path I was almost going to be taking myself to, is being one of those videographers for news. And as nothing against news, but it is a fast, crazy, hectic career and a job to keep up with. And I was like, oh man, luckily I ended up getting something to post, but it's like, having done those kind of like on the ground interviews, it's a lot of work. And I appreciate, I applaud all this, especially now these days. It seems like they're sending people out into like go in the storm, I'm like, the stakes of, it seems like the risk is higher now, but they're just like, you got to do it, on social media. So yeah, no, I feel I imagined also when the opportunity came up, like, oh my gosh, this is it. And I'm sure your parents or your dad was like, oh heck yeah, you're going to be freaking doing sports now. But that was really cool for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was a gradual transition. Yeah. Obviously, nothing really happened overnight, but
no, exactly. Yeah. And the practice experience. I
Sure.
think that's a good mindset you went into that of like, okay, news might not be my fit, but there's a lot to learn here. Which is something I've always been like, where it's like, you know what? I want to know how this works and what that is, because who knows, I could use
Well,
this
and the
for
most
something else.
important thing, if you want to be on camera, is to get comfortable in front of the camera, because that's the most difficult thing. You're not just born with it. They can't teach you that in college.
Sure.
I mean, you have to do it. You have to learn by doing. And so that, for me, was the easiest way to do it. I think it's a lot easier now because of social media and because of the fact that you have you're carrying around a video camera to practice and record yourself and watch it back and all that kind of stuff. And those were tools that were not available during my time.
No, for sure. That was one of those, we had a conversation before this of like, I feel like the pandemic really sped that kind of transition up, where we were heading there, but now it's like when we have to start having Zoom calls every day for work, or and it seemed like it kind of opened up more of that comfortability of people. Like, yeah, let's get on a video call and chat. We've always had emails. Why don't we just start talking? We can kind of communicate better. And I kind of like it. It's been great. It's been a lot more. I finally talked to a lot of people who I've been talking to years through like text or emails, but never face to face. And so when that kind of started happening up, it's a really cool, like, wow, why weren't we doing this for, this whole time? I wait so long. So, well, and then that's just one side of your career path. So, and I was going to ask about, what's the podcast side? How does that play into all the other things you have?
Well, I mean, my daddy always told me to make hay while the sun shines. And so, I'm getting up there in my career. I don't know how much longer I will be the field reporter for the Rangers. And so when that ends, I wanted to have other, not only streams of income, but things I was passionate about to do once I was ready to walk away from television. And so a little over 3 years ago, I had a girlfriend approach me, Julie Dobbs, who's my podcast host on The Mom Game, about starting a podcast. In the beginning, I was...
Real quick, Julie Dobbs from the radio?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, I just started hearing about her. I just started, this is a side rant, tangent, but I just started listening to The Freak, and she's on there, 971, and she's great. That's crazy. I was like, what's the name? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I have to
so
check it out.
We started The Mom Game about 3 years ago, and I told her if within 6 months it wasn't making money, I was going to walk away, because I don't have time in my life right now to throw things that aren't making money for me, to be quite honest with you.
Sure.
And so we started it, and it's been great, and 3 years later, it's booming, and we're having a great time, and it's basically just a couple of moms sitting around drinking wine, talking about sports and parenting, and our husbands, and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's been a ton of fun, and it's a nice little outlet for me. During Rangers broadcasts, I basically, get a minute to 90 seconds per hit to get my information in and tell my stories and all that. And so this gives me a much more extended platform to do that.
Yeah, a little more, I'm sure, unfiltered.
There's cussing and all that fun stuff, which I can't quite get away with on Rangers broadcast.
Yeah, no, I'm still kind of also just, again, trivia, because like I said, I'm familiar with sports, not the biggest sports fanatic, but, I also kind of like talk radio and to just know that, those in those circles and kind of collaborating in that sense. And that's really cool, because I feel like as much as, you got those ideas you want to do yourself, it's fun to have another partner in there with you, kind of support you, and it makes good conversations. Like
for sure. And our personalities are totally different, Julie and I. And
sure.
so it's a lot of fun.
So you were talking about the money in terms of, monetizing, this side kind of hobby or passion. with the podcast. So what's your main kind of like way of marketing within your content of podcasting, and do you have a strategy? Like what's in
Yeah, I mean, social
all
media is
entail?
obviously a huge part of that, and we have one of our minority owners is our kind of social media director, for lack of a better word, and then we've got another girl who does a lot of our clips.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so because I don't consider myself a social media expert, I'm kind of a dinosaur in that regard. I feel like I'm pretty much in line with a lot of 45-year-old women. That we're on there, but we don't really know what the hell we're doing.
Sure.
And so, we definitely identified that, Julie and I did, in terms of the mom game, is how to, come up with a professional strategy as to how to market the podcast.
Has like your, I guess maybe presence in the sports industry, has that kind of played into the growth of the podcast, or even kind of having some kind of making some noise in that scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to the making hay while the sun shines. Yeah. I mean, Julie was on the ticket in the DFW area for a long time. So she gained relevance in that regard. I have relevance in the Rangers space and in the DFW sports space because of the decade I spent at Fox Sports Southwest before making the transition just to the Rangers. And so basically our thinking was, we need to capitalize on kind of the brands that we've built within our traditional jobs and see if we can take them outside of that.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do.
It sounds like also just staying, again, to your interests, authentic to yourself. You're not trying to step into any other scenes like, hey, we know sports. We also see there's an audience for just moms like us talking about this stuff.
Right.
That isn't really, like you said, in that industry and scene, it's not as vocal. But becoming more so.
Well, there was definitely a void in the marketplace. There
Yeah.
wasn't a whole lot of, the vast majority of the sports stations and their content is geared toward
Sure.
men. And so there is a huge contingent of women who are interested in sports, but that's not necessarily all they want to talk about.
Right.
On the other hand, there's also a large contingent of men who don't just want to talk about sports and who like to hear a woman's perspective, someone other than their wife, about parenting and and marriage and all that kind of stuff and life in general. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
No, I feel like there's a bringing some of that more human element to it, just like not just always talking about what's true, where it's like, hey, what's going on today? How are you feeling? That type of thing. Whether is much more of a topic of discussion these days. Just like, again, I feel like kind of going back to the pandemic, just the mental health of it all.
Sure.
All of our busy days, try and juggle that. So when you started this podcast, when did you was there a moment when you're like, hey, this seems like it is going to be a thing? Like, was there a moment where you start seeing the growth kind of start trickling in? Or, I mean, like, you said you started 3 years ago, so like, it seems like it's pretty recent, like, and do you have other, I guess, visions or like goals you're still hitting, continuing to grow that, other ways to expand it?
Sure. I mean, I think we're always looking to grow, but I think more than anything, what we were trying to do was build a community, to build an audience of people who feel like they identify with us, want to interact with us, because that provides not only value to us as a podcast, but it provides value to our sponsors and our advertisers as well. Because if you're talking about, someone you don't know spouting about a product on a commercial on television, that's one thing. But if we're talking about a product or a service, we've used it, we've experienced it, we've tested it, all those kind of things. And so to us, it's not necessarily, I mean, of course, we'd love to get huge, giant numbers and be syndicated nationally or whatever, but that's not really the main goal. The main goal is to serve our audience and to serve our sponsors, those who have supported us and continue to support us.
And I feel like all that really, like the bigger goals and visions come naturally when you just focus on that stuff. It's like, I'm sure, like you said, have some dream partnerships or whatever opportunities you want, but as long as you keep doing the work, keep consistent, I'm sure a lot of those things are starting to kind of trickle in naturally.
Well, yeah, and into your goals and your mindset changes as you get older. True. And I'm not trying to to climb as high and as
Right.
far and as fast as I used to. And
Yeah.
so I'm, my terms on things have changed, and the way that I view things has changed. And so what might be considered a success to one person might not be considered
Sure.
a success to another. So it's all, kind of in the eye of the beholder. And
Yeah.
if it's making you happy and it's making you tick and it's fulfilling you and it's paying some bills, then I'm all for it.
No, I think that's a good mindset. I think a lot of people can I always say this, get caught up in the chase and the trends and the algorithms, and they forget why they started in the first place. And I think it seems like you have a pretty good headset of like, at the end of the day, you still want to have fun. This needs to still be kind of a release outside of your day-to-day job and all the other things you got going on in family and life. You just, it's like, let's not lose sight of that. This is why it started. So I think that's a really good, always, reminder. So as you've been doing this podcast, has there been any favorite moments you've had come for that you didn't expect, or other opportunities?
No, I think just the way it's been received has been great.
Yeah.
The guests we've been able to get on have been awesome.
Can you speak more on that?
We have Roger Staubach and his wife on. We've had Dirk Nowitzki, Mike Madonna, Adrian Beltre, Marty Turco. I mean, basically a ton of people, from the world of sports. And I think that makes Julie and I feel good, because those things happened because of relationships that we had developed over the 2 decades of our, I'm older than Julie, but, the relationships that I've developed over the last 20 years and being in this market, and the ones that she's developed over the last, 15 plus. And so, I think that makes us feel good, knowing that people trust us enough to come on the show and pop open a bottle of wine and just shoot the shit.
And that's a good note. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, it seems like you're really tapping in to your network, and not just like, I mean, I'm sure there's still a little bit of, groundwork to be made of just, reach out to people you maybe not reached out before, but also kind of like, hey, tap into people that you are working kind of day to day in those seasons with. I'm sure that's kind of helped with those kind of connections.
Sure. Yeah. And then, you'll come, like we had, gosh, I can't even think of her. Alex Snodgrass. I just know her because she's the Defined Dish. Like she's written all the cookbooks, and I am not a cook. I did not have any of her cookbooks, but somebody had suggested she would be a great guest, and then so we reached out to her, and she basically told us she said yes because her husband Clay is a huge Rangers fan, and also at that time had listened to The Ticket. And so, all those things kind of domino effect have been really fun to kind of get us even out of our element. I mean, a woman who wrote a cookbook isn't really up our alley. Julie and I really don't cook at all, either one of us. She does more than me. But so to get Alex on, who's like this New York Times best-selling author of this awesome cookbook and has this whole, line of side sauces or something, was a really cool thing for us. And it basically happened because she didn't know who the hell we were, but her husband knew who we were. And so stuff like that's been fun.
No, that's incredible. That's really cool. So we talked about your background in kind of the sports side and the podcast. As I mentioned before, we were talking, I find out all these other initiatives you had, as we said up front, the wine marketing, public speaking, even some business kind of other side developments you got going on. I was wondering if you could maybe, with the leukemia and
Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
Yes. I'm terrible at English.
That's okay.
So, I guess expand on that. Like how one, I guess just touch on some of the wine aspect and what does that entail, and then some of these other kind of like maybe nonprofit or public speaking things you got going on as well.
Well, so the wine was something I've been doing for, 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Bad at math. It's been 5 years in October. So 5+ years, I've been involved with Scout and Cellar, which is a direct sales company. It's a clean crafted wine company founded by a Dallas attorney who was studying to get her WSET certification, kept getting headaches, tried to figure out why she kept getting these headaches. Turns out there's a bunch of crap in mass-produced wine, so she went in search of wineries and vineyards that were making wine without all the crap, the pesticides, the additives, the preservatives, the added sugars. And so she started this company called Scout and Cellar. We started with like 4 different wines. Now we've got bukus and a ton of people marketing it, and it's just been a lot of fun. It's changed the way I drink wine. It's so nice to drink wine knowing it doesn't have a bunch of unnecessary crap in it. And I've built a team under me, and I try to be a good leader to them, and then service my clients as best as I can with their wine needs. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's just wine.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, so you can make some money while you drink wine and and talk about it and share it with people. I'm all in.
I was gonna say, I'd even, I think we always kind of jump to like wine, fermented grapes. It should be all just natural and good. But I didn't even think about how much. Obviously, you go to a shelf, how many different brands there are.
Yeah, and you can't find there's no ingredient labels on the back of the wine,
right.
And that's for a very good reason, because they don't want you to know what's in it. It's not good.
I'm very curious and intrigued now, because I also as one I'm more on the whiskey side of things, but I've always I need to find the wine that's gonna make. I mean, we could talk about
for sure
wine later, but anyway.
But there's a reason there's not labels on wine bottles.
No, so and again, it sounds like you really kind of accepted this that. It aligned more with your, I guess I want to say values, or just like what they were trying to do with this.
Well, yeah, I mean, and two, I'm trying to be healthy, like as healthy as possible. But so it's like it kind of went in line with it. I try to stay in shape and watch what I eat and drink, and so this kind of fell in line with that. I'm not so serious about it that I'm willing to give up drinking.
Sure.
So this is like a really good compromise for me. Yeah. And then, like I said, if I can drink wine and share wine and market wine and make some money in a product that I drink myself and that I believe in, I'm all in.
No, it's a sweet spot. I think having the pleasure and the benefits from all that.
Sure.
That perfect little thing. I was gonna say we usually take a break. Do you need a break? Or we want to just keep on going? We're halfway through, so.
Oh, I don't care.
Okay, cool. I'll start back. So tell me a little bit more about the other initiatives you got going on that we were talking about, the public speaking and the other.
So, well, first one that is very near to my heart is the Do It for Durrett Foundation. I'm the president of the Do It for Durrett Foundation, which is a nonprofit which provides financial assistance for families impacted by sudden loss. We founded that foundation, 8 years ago. After one of our colleagues passed away, Richard Durrett. He died suddenly, left behind a wife, 2 children, a pregnant wife and 2 children. And so we kind of galvanized a bunch of us involved with the Rangers organization and in the media, kind of galvanized, came together, raised a bunch of money for Richard's widow, Kelly. And Kelly afterward was like, I would like to continue to do this for other families. And so then that's when we decided to form the Do It for Durrett Foundation. To date, we've raised over $1.2 million and helped close to 150 families who have been impacted by sudden loss. And so that's a very big thing. That's probably the most fulfilling thing. Outside of being, outside of my family, that's the thing that gives me the most joy, which is kind of weird to say because you kind of wish we didn't exist, because that would mean people didn't die of sudden loss. But it's obviously a need that's not going away. And so to be able to provide some, relief to families who are literally in a whirlwind of sorrow and, disarray, to provide a little bit of, comfort and assistance to them to where they can hopefully navigate those waters a little bit easier is something we're really, really proud of as a foundation.
No, it's beautiful. I feel like it's really cool that you're, again, going back to tapping into your network to help support this cause. And in that kind of situation, I feel like anything's better than nothing and kind of help.
And I feel like people want to help. Sometimes they just don't know how.
Yes.
And so, like you said, tapping into the network, and hopefully people trust me to the point to where they're, they trust me with, an investment they make or, support that they give our foundation, that hopefully those relationships, pay off to where people want to help with good things that you're trying to get done.
Right. And how is this also playing to the leukemia?
So this is a totally separate thing.
Okay.
So this is something that the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society does each year. Sure. It used to be called Man and Woman of the Year, and this year they rebranded it to just Visionaries of the Year. And it's basically like a little bit of a friendly competition with, I don't even know how many of us there are, to see who can basically raise the most money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And so for me, this is something that's super important, having seen, especially in these hospital visits we do over the holidays to these, children that are, just battling different things. But, childhood cancer is one of the most underfunded programs in all of the cancer world, which is super unfortunate. And so I kind of put my focus on patient services, and so any money that I raise through my campaign will be committed to patient services, which I feel like is so incredibly important to provide the patients and the families the assistance they need to make sure that they can make it to their treatments, to have accommodations, to make sure that everything's taken care of, to make what is a terrible, terrible process that they have to go through, make it just a little bit more bearable.
Yeah, no, wow, that's, it's quite heavy. Just also think about, but also, it seems like your also ability to speak in front of camera, speak in front of people, has that helped a lot into getting into those rooms and also making, having voices there?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. I feel like, I don't know, my biggest asset is not being too professional. I kind of pride myself in being a little bit of a jackass. So, and I think there's a certain image you have of people who are on television or that you think are a certain way. And I think I probably go against that in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And it's something I'm really not willing to change at this point in my life. And there's no going back now. So, I hope that people appreciate that, I guess, attempt at authenticity by me, which is not really an attempt. It's just I don't know any other way to do things.
Yeah.
So hopefully those things help. And like I said, I really feel like people, they want to do good things. It's just sometimes they don't exactly know how to do them or exactly what to do. And so it's fun to see people enjoy getting, finding joy and feeling satisfaction out of doing something good for other people.
Well, what would you say would be a good tip of advice to, if someone did have interest in this? What would be the best ways to go about that? Is it kind of go to your local, communities or groups to kind of start kind of becoming aware and maybe get involved? I don't know, I'm curious to how.
Well, I would think first of all, you figure out what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
What are you, for me, I hadn't even thought about families impacted by sudden loss until
Right.
Richard died. And then when Richard died, it totally switched my way of thinking. It changed my perspective. Here was a guy who was my age and had a pregnant wife and 2 children that were left holy, what do we do?
Yeah.
And so, those different types of things change the way you look at things. And the whole Leukemia and Lymphoma, Society thing, they asked me to do it last year, and I said no, I had too much on my plate. And then this year, they approached me again, and I felt really drawn to it. We had a friend in our community who had a long battle with cancer, and I don't want to say he lost that battle, but he didn't make it through that battle. And just seeing the way that he fought and seeing his family and what they went through. And so I thought, this is, quit being lazy, Emily, stop being selfish. You have an opportunity to, to raise some money for something, a very, very worthy cause, and
Sure.
something that, you kind of have a little bit of more of a better idea about now, looking at their story. And so, I would say that would be the first thing, is to find what you're passionate about. Is it children's causes? Is it animals? Is it dogs? Is it the elderly? Is it what? There's so many different things. So find whatever it is that you're passionate about. Because if you're not, it's just going to be another thing.
Right. No. And they all need help, I think.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can't really,
we all do.
Yeah, it's you can't go wrong with choosing any of
Yeah.
those.
Middle-aged white women need help. It's I can speak from experience. I need lots and lots of help.
Well, speaking of, you just said a little bit in there about how your plate was full, and so that comes to my next question of how do you balance your professional job and all these other side, hustles of sorts that you got going on? That's a lot. A job's enough, and a family. How do you balance all that?
Well, it's just time management. It's just trying to be efficient with your time, prioritizing things.
Well, and talking about time management, this I always kind of wonder about this, is do you have a routine? like a good steady routine of like getting up at a specific time, eating.
Yeah, I mean, during the week I do.
Yeah.
Weekends are a little more flexible, but I mean, especially when the kids are in school,
Yeah.
it's pretty regimented. But summertime's a little different. When I'm on the road, it's a little different. Weekends are a little different, but weekdays during the school year, it's pretty much the same thing every day.
No, wow, I feel like, just like you had that perspective change of seeing other people suffering and kind of like what can I do. It's also just, I mean, as we're having this conversation, hearing your background, inspiring to me of just like, okay, yeah, I need to kick it up into gear. There's a lot more things, I think we all want to do and, are passionate about and how little time we might have some, and seeing other things. And it sounds like you kind of like what, your upbringing of just filling in those spots where you can. And
And I feel like too, a lot of people, I'll approach people about the wine business and they're like, oh, I'm too busy. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, so am I. But if you make time for stuff you want to make time for. So if it's not, and quite frankly, if you don't want to make time for it, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Sure.
And so for me, I make time for things because I want to do them and because they're important to me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of times it's not that you don't have time, it's that you don't want to make the time. I mean, we're all busy. Everybody's busy. So it's just a matter of like, if like people are like, I don't have time to work out. Well, no, you do.
Priorities.
Like, wake up an hour earlier. Like, it's pretty simple. Like, it's not that hard. Set the alarm an hour earlier. Go to bed an hour earlier. So if you prioritize it, then that's just what you do. And if you don't, and I'm not saying, I don't care if you work out. I don't care if you join the wine business, whatever. But it's not because you don't have the time.
Right.
And it's not because you don't have the capabilities. It's because you're choosing not to make the time. And you're choosing not to do it, which is fine. Totally your priority or your prerogative. But don't lie to yourself and say it's because you don't have time.
No, and I feel like all that is it's kind of in its own way a workout for the mind. And just, I'm sure, like you said, set your alarm clock earlier, try like slowly kind of get that in, or maybe go to like one meeting or go volunteer at one place once a week, and then maybe start increasing that.
Sure, yeah, you don't have to be balls to the wall on everything. I mean, just you pick your spots. I mean, obviously when baseball season starts, the Rangers are my top priority, and they take precedent over everything else outside of my family. And then everything else kind of, not goes by the wayside, but goes further down on the list. And so it's all about, doing that. And it's important too to take ownership of that, and I've tried to be very deliberate with my decisions and what I say yes to and what I say no to. And I think a lot of people, they say yes because they want to please people. And to me, I think that's a disaster. If you're not into something, you shouldn't do it. But if you do want to do something, I feel like you should, commit to it and give it what you have at that time. And that can change from day to day, from week to week, from year to year. Life is all about different seasons. And so just because, I'm all in on baseball for 6 months out of the year doesn't mean that I'm that way year round. I focus my attention on different things. So it's okay to mix things up a little bit.
And change, like you said. The seasons thing, I think, is a good important. We all go through phases, just like our fashion and our taste. And I feel like every now and then it's like, you just might have a different new passion, and just kind of always say follow those voices or that instinct. There's a reason why you feel that and you're drawn to that. I think it's the more you can be in tune with that, I think that's kind of honing it into your purpose, you know? So with the Rangers, you said 6 months, kind of like in the baseball season. Has that experience being on field given you a lot of I don't know, learnings or takeaways where you kind of now approach that to your other side initiatives you have going on, like in terms of just the pace or just how you work with others?
Yeah, I think everything I do is relationship driven. Everything I do. So whether it's baseball or the wine business or the podcast or anything else that I do, it's all relationship driven. And I've been very adamant about that from the start of my career, which wasn't always a popular thing, because at that time before I was working for the Rangers, I was considered a member of the media, and you're supposed to be, unbiased, and you keep your distance and all that. And I was like, that's not the way I operate. To me, I felt like I was doing our viewers a disservice if I didn't develop these relationships in order to, to get these guys to trust me like that. I want them to be able to trust me and tell me things, not tell me things off the record that I'm then going to go spill the beans about, but for them to open up to me and tell me things. And then, that way I can communicate those things to our viewers. And so that's something that I've always done throughout my entire career, despite getting a significant amount of resistance, especially very early on. And so everything to me is relationship driven. It's, how can I get to know someone better, to learn how they operate, how they tick, what their needs are, what their desires are, what their, goals are, all those kind of things. And so I feel like that's no different, from the baseball to the wine business to the podcast. I feel like it's all about trying to, to learn about people. And sometimes that's simply just asking questions and listening and showing interest in someone else's story. And whether that's not even just for my jobs, that's also in real life, like with my kids, friends and their families and their teachers and all that kind of stuff to try to gain a better understanding of, where people came from and see what I can learn from them, because Lord knows I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah, no, I think the more and more I've been kind of going with that mindset of like, I don't know anything, and to always be open to those conversations and listening to people out. Even if you might at the beginning think it has nothing to do with you, I think there's always something to take away from it. I always tell people kind of like, watch a TV show or movie that you didn't think you'd be into, because it's always, from an artist's perspective, I think there's good and bad things to take away from it that you can learn from.
Well, and that's what kills me about politics, because I'm like, so you're going to tie all your beliefs to a donkey or an elephant? Like, that's it. Like, I'm donkey, I'm elephant. Like, what? Like, aren't you, like, wait, we can't, you're not just a donkey, you're not just an elephant. But it's like, you can't, it's like, and then people think they know and it's like, so out of all the people, you're the one. You've got it figured out. You're the one that has it figured out. Oh, and your religion, it's the one. That's the one. It's your religion. That's the right one for everybody. It's your politics. And I'm like, guys, like, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences that have molded us and created our faith and our belief and the things we stand for. And it's not because you're right and I'm wrong. It's just we come from different experiences. And so if you want to understand why someone believes what they do, you've got to understand what they've been through. Right. But nobody wants to hear that. They just want to be a blue donkey or a red elephant. And it makes me crazy. There's my political reason. And that's why I stay away from it, because I literally don't know shit about politics. I hate it. And that's why I hate it, because we've boiled it down to freaking donkeys and elephants.
Well,
Welcome to my TED Talk. Sorry.
This is Emily Jones here with the Social Academy. Was it? Well, and like you said, we're all, I think, getting back to what you were talking about, we're all figuring it out.
We're all idiots. If everyone would just admit we're all idiots, we would be in a lot better spot.
And there's so much
But
to learn.
everyone's trying to be too smart and trying to pretend like they know everything. If everyone would just admit we're idiots, all of us, we'd be a lot better off. I'll start. I'm an idiot.
And I feel like there's good things to take away from maybe those people you've had on your podcast. And like you said, the chef with the cookbook, it's like I always find it fascinating, just like I'm talking to you, how other people in different industries work and what's the mindset and how the practices and routines, because I feel like it kind of can apply to everything to a certain extent, and there's good practices to take away and advice. So like you said, and going back to the human relationship, I think that's very important, because as we're entering more in the social age, the digital age, they're becoming whatever, it's sometimes people forget there's another person behind the screen, or that, hey, why don't you talk to that person? Have a faith, get back to the human element.
It's a novel thing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, whenever all this, during COVID, when all the social unrest was happening, I remember having so many conversations with my boys that I've known for a long time. That I remember Delano DeShields and having a conversation with him, and he's like, let me just tell you about what it was like, what it's like for me. Like, let me tell you about some circumstances. I mean, I have friends that have been through things, and it's like, I would tell my white friends this, like, when is the last time you had a meaningful conversation with a person of color? Like, literally, when's the last time? And they would think, and I'm like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to like live in this la la land that shit's not going wrong, and it is, and there are people that are experiencing it, and just because you're not and you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Truly.
So it's like, but people don't want to have conversations, and that's one of the problems about social media is that people just want to fire stuff off, and then they don't want to actually listen to anyone. They just want to fire their hot sports opinion, drop the bomb, and then walk away, and not ever listen to anyone else's perspective. And
No.
it sucks.
Well, I think you're a perfect segue into my next question, because I'm wondering about this, since you've been on the field for so long, kind of really saw the integration of social media come to play with your work, just like all of us in the creative industry. And how has those challenges of like, because now it's like you have to be much more in there in the moment to really bring that, first look news right before anyone else, because it seems like you can go on Twitter and it's like sometimes I see things happen on Twitter before the news even reports it. So I wonder, how is that element of social media and how it moves so fast, how do you how has that changed the pace and the way you're communicating that information?
Well, and I think it's all about your personal like preference. I mean, for me, I like put it out there that I'm a social media dinosaur, so no one's looking at me to break news or bring them, whatever.
Right.
I just don't, that's not something I'm willing or want to get caught up in, that kind of rat race of it. And so because of my position, I really don't have to worry about that anyway, because I work for the team. They're not, that the last thing they want me to do is to release something before they do.
Gotcha.
So it kind of gets me out of that situation that I didn't want to be in to begin with. But I've seen it with my colleagues that are, that their livelihood is based on clicks, and if they're the first to tweet or get something out, and it's like, that must be exhausting, and that sucks for you, but it's part of the world we live in now. And it's hard for, organizations who are used to having control of the narrative and being able to kind of shape it and sending out a press release and then letting you react to it, and the news cameras coming out. It's not the way it works anymore. No one's beholden to an organization to wait on anything. If someone gets information, they can tweet it out if they want to. And so it's been a whole dynamic shift in kind of who holds the power in this thing. And so I'm thankful I don't have to be on it. I mean, if I get a piece of news, I don't even usually say anything, because the Rangers would just rather them do it, and I don't personally care. I just don't care about being the first to do anything. So yeah, that's kind of in the not my problem category, but I definitely have seen how it's affected my colleagues.
Yeah, sure. I mean, especially like every game. I mean, everyone's got the phone out. I'm probably catching moments before someone else, a person actually on the field trying to capture it.
Well, and so I guess what I try to do is I'm trying to give people, like on my social media or provide for the Rangers, like the things you can't see on television, and maybe places where I am that no one else can be, that I can get. And then also too, it goes back to relationships. Maybe I can get Nathaniel Lowe to act goofy on a Insta story or whatever. All that's kind of my jam, rather than trying to be the first to tell you that somebody's been traded or something.
Sure, and that's a very good point, is using your access to those opportunities that no one else has. And that's really, I think that's probably why it's still a big thing, because not everybody's going to be in the dugout, not everybody's going to be on the field, is sports primarily on Twitter in terms of social media, or is it becoming more on the Instagram stories or YouTube? Where is that mostly?
I feel like it's pretty Twitter dominant.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and this may be totally stereotypical and out of line, but I feel like it's because Twitter is so much more male dominated, and Instagram is so much more female dominated, to where that's where it kind of skews. I feel like my female counterparts in the sports industry are definitely heavy on Instagram, but I feel like my male colleagues are far more heavy on Twitter.
No, that's good to know.
And I have zero facts or knowledge to back that up.
No,
it's kind of just what I think.
It makes sense, I think, and also Twitter kind of being one of the earliest platforms for that. I feel like that kind of sports really adapted to that. And now I find it pretty wild to see coaches having to tweet or post things and
it's part. Oh no, they have to. There's no choice.
Wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What a weird shift of just. Again, just like all of us carrying multiple different hats it's like a whole new thing. We're
Yeah, but you have to evolve. I mean, it's
yes,
part of it.
That's really what it is. It's really evolving less.
Yeah.
Of it.
I mean, I used to just get blown up on chat rooms, and now it's directly chat rooms.
Good
Yeah.
old
Message boards.
Yes, I was deep in. I was definitely grew up on the message boards and chat rooms.
Yep.
News groups.
Now they can just come right for you.
Yeah. Well, what's the greatest lesson you've learned in your career? I feel like you've got many, and feel free, sure.
I think just don't take yourself too seriously. Don't. I mean, especially in my case, like,
Right.
it's not like I'm doing anything really important at this point in my life. Like, it's not like I'm saving lives or
Sure.
curing cancer. I mean, I'm helping try to raise money for childhood cancer, but it's like at the end of the day, I'm talking about baseball, wine, and momming. It's like, I think a lot of times we get so uptight and we overanalyze things, and we take, did I say this right? Did I say that right? Should I have said that? Should I not have said that? Should I have done that? Should I not have done that? It's like, really at the end of the day, like, just take a deep breath it's just not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, I take my job seriously, my jobs, but I just don't take myself too seriously. So I think a lot of times you get so caught up, and I'm a huge perfectionist and all that kind of stuff, and so it's kind of a little bit of a contradiction for my personality.
Yeah, I was about to say, how's that?
But I really have. I try not to take myself too seriously. Because really at the end of the day, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
Especially for me, like, what I'm doing is just not that big of a deal. I just need to chill out and don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, remembering where you came from. I feel like you kind of still find that excitement being on the field and the opportunity to be like, man, I had, like you said, when I was young, having that dream.
Sure.
And now I'm living it, which has got to be a weird full circle moment.
Yeah, there's something very beautiful about when you get to a point where you give very few F's and you just kind of are like, I've done, if it all ends tomorrow, I'll have had a fantastic career and I'll ride off into the sunset and, whatever. But yeah, there is, but I worked my ass off to get to that point. And it took me, 25 years to get there. But yeah, you kind of reach a point to where you stop that, that continuous climb and trying to reach that carrot, and you just kind of do the things that are good for you and are good for your family and are good for your soul.
No, I agree. I think that's very beautifully put in terms of just, again, it's got to be an amazing feeling to find your place and purpose like that, and then just be like, I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, it's great. And then you have a couple kids and they totally screw everything up and make you question everything you've ever done. But outside of my children, we're all good.
What about, and with your children, have they kind of expressed similar interests? Do you see them kind of, and do you support that, or how do you see?
Yeah, my daughter is a total, ham, and she wants to be like a YouTube star or something. My son is not. He loves baseball and loves what I do and all that kind of stuff, but she's the one that worries me a little bit, especially with the how easy now it is, and she sees these kids and why can't I be on YouTube? Why can't I? And I'm like, you're not going there. Not yet. Mommy loves you too much to expose you to all that mess right now.
I feel like there was a small little detail you mentioned about the length you've been doing it, 25 years. People always, I always talk about other conversations, the unseen years, and people always just see the result, the success. They don't realize how much work that you've have done to get there. And I was wondering if you had maybe any kind of advice of just how to stay consistent and maybe think of, the obvious one is thinking of just the long picture, but sometimes you can get clouded and kind of get distracted.
Yeah, and a piece of advice I always give when I talk to like students or whatever, anybody looking for guidance that is misguided enough to come ask me advice, is to start with start at the top. Like what's the ultimate goal? Like mine used to be an anchor for Sports Center on ESPN. Yeah. And now I can't think of, that makes me want to gag. Like sitting behind a desk and reading off a prompter every day sounds awful. But at one time that was the ultimate goal. And so then I would work backward. Like what's a logical step right below ESPN Sports Center anchor? Maybe it's being an anchor in a top 5-10 market. Okay, then what's a step below that? Well, then it would be like a, sports reporter in a top 50 market. And what's a step below that? Maybe it's a weekend anchor in a top 25 market or a top 75 market, whatever. Like, just so start at the top. Don't be afraid to look at that big goal, but then step by step work your way back with what's a direct step under each one of those, and then ultimately end up to where you are, to where you can kind of map it out. Now, my roadmap took curves and different things, but I ultimately ended up with where I wanted to be, not necessarily a sports center anchor, because that ultimate goal changed along the way.
Sure.
And that's another piece of advice too. I always tell people, don't get so laser focused on that end result that you're not keeping your eyes open to the things, that the paths that are open along the way as you take those steps up the ladder.
Yeah, I always say embrace change. Obviously, I'm always about change, and I feel like kind of what you're saying. You might be in some moments throughout your journey where you're like, I don't know why I'm here, whatever, but I feel like there's always a reason for it, and you always learn something like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that one time I had to work at a real estate magazine place, and now I'm designing something that's in that field that had nothing to do with my profession, but now I'm touching something else, just,
well, and it's not like I woke up one morning and was like, well, that sports center anchor job looks really shitty now. I mean, it's not like I ever woke up and said that, but it's all of a sudden I was in this place where it was like, oh, wait, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Like,
this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And so then you just kind of realize it. It's not like it was an epiphany that happened.
No. It's and obviously with the ever-changing landscape of all the kind of roles and titles, it's sometimes I remember my first job was editing trailers that go on DVDs, and I didn't think that was even a job, and I used to be like, man, I used to watch the trailers and DVDs all the time. I didn't even think about who had to make those. I'm a machine man, but then I'm like, wow, yeah, I love that. And so sometimes it's also becoming open to look around and go like, well, how did that get made, or who's doing this? How's so it's because some people forget there's a lot of opportunities out there that you might not even think about.
Sure.
Well, I know you said you weren't the most fluent in social media, but I think with your experience of it and how it's been involved in your all your facets of your career, do you have any insights of where you kind of see the future of social media going within your field of sorts?
Oh gosh, no, I don't. I mean, I don't think it's going it's not going anywhere, obviously. I mean, it's here to stay, and I feel like now, especially like with so many businesses, keeping their employees at home, so many companies going to a direct sales format. I mean, I just feel like it's going to become so much more prevalent in the business aspect of things. Influencers leveraging their followers and all that kind of stuff to make money. I mean, I just think the possibilities are endless. It's kind of terrifying, honestly. I'm glad I'm getting older, and hopefully soon won't need it too much. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's going anywhere. I'm definitely not smart enough to tell you what's coming though.
Sure. No, it seems like also like, sometimes I watch Dateline. You have Keith Morrison, who's always on those episodes, and then suddenly he's on a podcast. I'm like, wow, he has to do a podcast now because of social media. That I'm sure that's like, hey, we need to have a companion content to our main show. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that evolve in the sports entertainment field as well. Where it's
I mean, we had a writer that was with the Rangers forever named T.R. Sullivan, and when the whole kind of multimedia thing started happening within Major League Baseball, I mean, TR was like not equipped to do. He's like an old gruff writer and has zero camera skills, and so they brought me in to do the video portion, whereas TR would do the writing, and then I would provide some video content, because they wanted all their teams to have a written and a video content. And so some people, I feel like now, if you're going to be in media or in journalism or whatever, you have to have both of those tools in your belt. You can't, I almost feel like it's hard to be just a writer anymore. You have to have the multimedia component.
Yeah, it goes back to what you're saying, like, it's kind of to stop being laser focused on one thing, kind of like embrace all the other things, and also you might end up finding something that you didn't think was suited for you, find that you have a natural talent in.
Sure.
It's all moving fast and
very quickly.
Always changing. Well, I appreciate you coming in, Emily. I know, again, insanely busy, and I appreciate you making the time to come chat here. And this has been really enlightening and inspiring in some ways too. It's really cool because again, I kind of there's a lot to learn, and I'm sure we'll probably have some more questions later after this. But before we sign off, I was wondering if you want to plug any kind of last initiatives, projects. Where can they find you out on social and your podcast?
Yeah. So social media is probably a good place because if anything's important, I put it there. So I'm at Emily Jones 1977, which will tell you exactly how old I am. So Instagram, Emily Jones 1977. I think I'm Emily McCoy on Facebook. Does anybody use Facebook anymore? Twitter, I'm at Emily Jones McCoy. And then the Mom Game is at the Mom Game Pod, and that's on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, check us out, Mom Game Pod. Emily Jones McCoy, Scout and Cellar Wine.
Yes,
I got it all.
Check it. Yeah,
Yes.
no, I'm definitely gonna have to try some of this because again, that's a fascinating thing. It seems like you've another side thing where just what seemed like just a casual. Pleasures. Now you've learned so much about it too in that sense, which is really cool. So this has been an amazing conversation, Emily, and I appreciate it. And until the next episode, class dismissed.
Class dismissed.
Yeah, so that's my tagline.
There you go.
I had to make one. I don't know.